Good evening to everybody who is joining us. We're just waiting for a few more participants to join our Zoom chat, and we will get started. Thank you so much for taking time out of your evening to join us for this Connect and Create program in partnership with the Lehigh University Libraries. We'll be with you in just a few moments. All right, well, I think we should get started as we need lots of time today to focus on the work at hand. Thank you all for joining us this evening for Art and Write, the Poetry of Place in partnership with the Lehigh University Libraries and the Lehigh University Art Galleries. This is part of our Connect and Create series. And this is the first time we are piloting this on the virtual Zoom, so thank you all for being a part of this. We ask that participants keep their audio muted for now. We will have audience participation at different points, and we'll ask you to either raise your hand or put anything in the chat box for questions or comments, and then we will have you participate and unmute yourselves later in the program. It is my pleasure today to welcome you. My name is Stacy Brennan. I'm the Curator of Education for the Lehigh University Art Galleries. I am joined today by Mark Wansleder, who's our Curator of Exhibitions and Collections, and Jasmine Woodson, who is the Assistant Director for Instruction and Outreach for the Lehigh University Art Libraries. So with that, we are going to start our program. Jasmine, if you would advance. Yeah, so this is just an overview of kind of what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be discussing the theme of place and home, using examples of writing and works of art from the collections of the galleries. We're going to have some group prompts and response, and then a little bit of time to focus on our own writing with group share. And then we hope that after this workshop, you'll share your final writing with us for possible inclusion in our first digital chapbook.
Okay. Hi, everybody. So my name is Jasmine. I'm a librarian at Lehigh. Stacy and I met and talked about doing kind of an art and writing event back in February, and we were both really excited about it. And then, weeks passed and circumstances became a lot different. But I was still really excited that she was interested in rethinking what we could do virtually. And we were talking about a theme. Place kind of emerged as particularly relevant, and place with an emphasis on home. Because in this era of quarantine, we are all stuck in a particular place. The places that we can go is very limited. And maybe that place is a place you consider home, or maybe it's not. I think what we'll kind of dialogue through while looking at poetry and looking at art is, what does the word home mean to us, and where are the places that we find home? I think there's 20 people in this event right now, and if I were to ask how would you define home, there'd be 20 different definitions, I think. So we'll look at like the different lenses of what home can mean to each of us throughout the course of this hour that we spend together. I really like this quote from Toni Morrison, where she says, home is memory, home is history, and home is where you work. And when she says work, I don't take it to mean like where I work my job, but more like where I do the work of being a person and growing and developing. And so that's a quote that I just want to kind of keep centered throughout this. I also wanted to say that the communication isn't about right answers or wrong answers. I think every answer we might have is right. It's not about being an expert. I definitely don't consider myself an expert on poetry or art, but rather that we all have unique experiences to contribute to this dialogue, and that's what makes engaging with art, whether it's visual art or literary art, like so really wonderful and illuminating. So I look forward to the conversations that we'll have today. Okay, so we're going to start off with a poem. So this poem is called At the Salon, and it's written by Eve Ewing, who's a poet from Chicago, just a few years ago. And would anybody be willing to unmute themselves and read the poem aloud? If you're interested in doing that, just type in the chat. I'll do it. Oh no. So somebody can't see it. I hope, is there anybody else who's having trouble seeing things? Okay, so Hope said that she will do it. So go ahead, Hope, take it away.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so At the Salon. Sorry, baby, says Miss Annetta as she pulls my head by my hair through plastic and sees my jaw flex and muscles in my neck that had been invisible. Soon I am in a house. No, I am in an ocean. No, I am plasma in the sun. No, I am an atom in a particle accelerator. And time is so slow for me. I don't know it. And before me, the whole universe is here, like the closing scenes of Kubrick, vast and flowing. And did you know glass is liquid? It's moving before your eyes, but too slow to see. That's what this is. I am in the universe, and it is my hair, each strand arched electric and perfectly still before my eyes, dancing crooked, arranged just so in the air, like the last humming chord of a song. I watch them from inside. One is white, twisting amidst the others like a bolt of quiet lightning. She tugs some more, and now I am a veiled woman. I see the world from here, and the world is dark brown, and the world keeps me modest, hidden. From without, I am not a face, but a lace curtain, as over a woman betrothed, as over the window of a solemn neighbor, as over a passing hearse. I sit a little taller, for one so hidden must be of consequence. She combs again, and I see again. The dryers, the flickering television, the open sign through which men sometimes peer, eyes finding gaps in the neon as they pass in the street.
Thank you so much, Hope. You have like a really good reading voice. Like you could read audiobooks. Thank you. So to start with, I wanted to ask what about this poem stands out to you? Just any particular lines, any images? And if you could just respond in the chat box. Cool. So Linda says she travels so far and then comes back to herself. Yeah, which is, I think, really interesting, how she goes on almost like this cosmic journey, cosmic mental journey, while she's in the space of the hair salon. And Rachel said she really likes the line twisting amidst the others like a bolt of lightning. And yeah, when I was reading that, I think she's talking about her actual like strands of hair there. So it felt like a description of a dream. And it's of the moment, immediate thoughts during the experience. No, I am, no, I am. Yep, those are really great observations. So Holly says transformation. Holly, can you explain a little bit more what you mean by that?
Can I unmute? Is the easier? I'm multitasking. I guess it just like the idea that she comes into the salon and it seems like a routine, mundane thing, but the poet is making it into an epic journey and a transformation for her. Is more than just her hair, you know?
Yeah, I think it's so interesting that we think of, some people might think of salons as like this space of vanity and superficiality, but like she's having this really intense, like meditative moment while she's at the salon. And I think a lot of people actually, that's why they like going. Because that might be the only quiet time they have to reflect, or connect with whomever else is in the salon too. So Krista said she loves the line, I sit a little taller. It's a great line. And Lou says the open sign, open in all caps, yeah. So it's interesting how like the way the word is actually typed, that open, we can see that in our mind's eye. Holly, yes, it is peaceful and good to have your head touched. Yeah, it's very relaxing. Okay, so we're gonna thank you all for giving your insight into the poem. I feel like we could keep talking about it for a while, but we're gonna move on now to looking at a piece of art in tandem with this poem. So I'm gonna advance here. Okay.
So Mark and I are going to tag team a little bit on this one. And what I would suggest is to begin just by looking at this work of art. What do you notice when you really look deeply at this work of art? Feel free to add kind of messages in the chat box or to unmute yourself, but we want to kind of really look at what we're seeing here. What are some themes that we're seeing? How is the artist using the light in this painting, or the material itself?
Natasha makes a really interesting observation. He's holding the paper, but isn't really looking at it.
He looks like he's lost thought, And Holly says affluence and class in this painting. Hope says, I like the shadings of light against the chair and his face, but his eyes look a little tired to me.
You are all tremendous observers.
He's got a lot on his mind. Yeah, he looks like he's lost in thought. Lou says he is looking at the past. And Chelsea makes a good point. We, when we were discussing this work of art, we were trying to place what the painting is behind the figure in the painting. That seems like something we all might recognize from a Renaissance kind of time period. It's really beautiful and looks like so many things that we might recognize, right, Mark?
Yeah, it seems like there's some kind of celestial revelry going on in that painting. It seems like we might be seeing clouds and possibly some sort of heavenly figures, either gods or saints, and some winged beings, I think, as well. It seems like the painting sort of suggests there might be a connection between the inner state of this fellow that we only know from the title, the music critic, and what's going on in the painting.
So you're all making some really great observations and kind of statements about what you notice in the painting. When we start in the gallery, we always encourage observers to really look at a work of art without making judgment. So what are some non-judgmental things that you would see within a work of art? And then as you start to kind of build a case for what you see, you can make a statement about it, almost as you would in writing as well. So, and to what Mark said in terms of kind of the painting behind them, you're all making some really interesting statements about kind of the present and the past, and the role that religion might play in one's life, and possibly in this individual's life.
People are noticing different levels of detail in the different objects in the painting, the illegibility of what is on the paper against the detail of the frames. It's one way that the artist is guiding us through what to pay attention to in the painting.
The use of light is a really great way to look at this painting. I love that Pamela kind of referred to it as chiseled still light, almost the way that a sculptor would carve a work of art. This painter is carving this image with light.
The light is very evocative, and I think, we can all ask ourselves, what time of day is this, and what is the relationship in time of the figure that we see in the painting to the changing light? Stacy, I think you're, yeah.
Sorry about that. Chelsea said she feels like the items around him aren't from the same time period he's living in. The gilded mirrors, paintings, and furniture don't seem to match the era or decade of his suit. So interesting way to kind of look at time and place in this painting. So as we talk about place or home, Janice kind of stated she can't figure out whether this is a home or whether it's actually a gallery. So is he sitting in his own interior space, or is he in another space?
That's a great question.
And then Patty, thank you for bringing that up, the use of the mirror and how that reflects a deeper space that he's sitting in. I think this artist used mirrors in a lot of his paintings to reflect light and space. So an interesting way to kind of view that.
Really like that you are thinking about the space beyond what we can see in our view of the painting, and that raises a lot of questions for me about what might the rest of the space be like. Is he in fact alone as we are seeing him, or is it possible that something else is going on around him?
Could be a music room or a parlor, as Holly stated.
I like this observation from Judy that he doesn't seem to be engaging with the things in his environment. That he may be looking inward.
Yeah, great point. Could he be waiting for something or just reading to entertain himself?
Right. That's what happened just before and what might happen just after this moment of the scene.
So kind of a timely painting, I think, too, with what we're all experiencing at home and trying to kind of cultivate our minds with music and writing and reading.
Yeah, on that note, Stacey, I'm going to move it to the prompt. So thinking about the poem and the painting and how they're kind of thematically similar, they're expressing like a moment of interiority. So describe the prompt that we came up with is to describe a moment in the past where you've experienced deep reflection. So what brought on the moment? Like in the painting, we're not 100% sure. It might have been the book. It might be the painting behind him. It might be something in his surroundings. In the poem, it was just being in a hair salon and getting her hair done. So what brought on that moment? Where were you when that moment occurred? What was around you? So thinking about sight, smell, sound, and what did you see in your mind's eye? So we're gonna take about 4 or 5 minutes of just writing. And remember, we'll have time if you wanna share what you wrote, we'll have time at the end of this. But now is just a time to respond to the prompt. So we're going to take another minute and then we'll move on. Okay, so let's all come back. Let's see. Thank you for those of you who shared what you were thinking about in the chat. Those are really beautiful moments and experiences. So I'm gonna advance here. Okay, so our next poem is by a poet named Banu Kapil. I meant to show the books. Here's the book it comes from. So would anybody like to volunteer to read this poem? Okay, Celia, thank you.
Who are you and whom do you love? A back room at the A1 Suite Cafe on the South Hall Broadway. My father and I are drinking chai and eating chat while we wait for my mother to finish her grocery shopping at Dokal and Sons. We order extra onions and vinegar and eat without speaking. I am 16 years old. 9 or 10 years later, when I am walking through a redwood grove on the coast of Northern California, it is my father eating steadily and ferociously in the semi-darkness of the Daha in the northwestern London, who seems remote. The distances between my body and the bodies of the ones I love grow. They are limited by coasts. I have a few questions to ask, but I do not know how to break the growing silence. I breathe in the salty mist, walk back along the wild, shifting edge of everything.
Thank you, Celia. You also have an amazing audiobook. I'm very grateful to Celia and Hope for reading because you're excellent at it. So yeah, let's start off with a similar question. So what about this poem stood out to you? So Linda said the last 6 words, and I agree. Like, when Celia read it, I was like, oh yeah, those words are really amazing. Wild shifting edge of everything. And I also was like, that kind of speaks a bit to our time now. I feel like everything is shifting constantly. Yeah, like Hope said, it's also just emblematic of the experience of being human. We grow, we change, we birth. So Holly said this is a poem about loss. I would agree.
Janice wrote to me, I feel the sadness of the distance, not only in miles, but also in culture and experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an interesting title. So something interesting about the book actually is she has like 12 different questions that she just answers again and again. And this is one of the questions. And it's like along a trajectory, like a chronological trajectory, but also like just emotionally, she's in different places. Geographically, she's in different places. So her responses change over time to these questions, including this one. Yeah, so growing up means losing some things and gaining others. So what would you all say that this poem has to do with place or with home? So Allison says, I think it's longing for things you used to be able to take for granted. And Holly says her father is the forest in London. And food, food is also always a big part of what it means to be in a place we consider home. So Judy said, we think of home as how it was in the past, not how it is at the current time. Time distorts. Yeah, memory is a funny, tricky thing, for sure. And home is wherever the ones you love are. Yeah, so that's one of the definitions, I think probably a lot of us, if not most of us, might say for how we define home. And not necessarily just a place, but it might be the people in the place. Yeah, so parents still equals home for me, Krista says. That's how it is for me too. And to that end, it's hard when I'm sure we're all experiencing this when we can't actually be in the same space with the people that we love. So she talks about distances between my body and the bodies of the one I love, and probably everybody in this event right now is experiencing that. Yeah. So any other final thoughts on the poem or how it talks about place and home? Chelsea says, I resonate with the line, I have a few questions to ask. Yeah. Home is also the stories of our ancestors. Yeah, that's such a great thing to say. Okay, so being mindful of time, I'm gonna advance to the next, our next piece of art. But thank you all again for your wonderful insights.
We will share the comments from the chat box after with the presentation. So you can all have each other's writing as well. So on to our next one. Some of you, many of you will probably recognize the image in this photograph of Walker Evans. And there's some interesting things that we would observe here. And just as you would have done in the last writing, we all can make meaning from what we see here from our own experiences, possibly living in Bethlehem or exploring the grounds there. But this capture is, you know, really iconic, I think, from during this time period when Bethlehem Steel was still in operation. Yes, this is close to Lehigh. This is right up the street from the steel furnaces, and is still there, St. Michael's Cemetery. And they are in need of help, actually. They just sent out for volunteers to help take care of it. But many photographers have come back to this place to capture the same vantage point. So it's an interesting kind of capture of place and time and how that shifts and grows with the community. What are some things that this makes you think of? What is captured here, kind of the artist's intention from this vantage point and how we see things, you know, in the foreground and some further out in the distance.
It's interesting the way that he plays with um, scale and importance, right? Because we have many things in this photograph, from from a tombstone shaped like a cross, to the row houses, to an entire steel factory, to an entire city beyond. And all of those things, through the lens of the photographer, are brought into kind of collision and conversation with each other. And he does a lot to shift the balance of detail, and emphasis, and what may or may not be important.
Yeah, and just as the painter did in the last work of art that we looked at, John Koch, this artist, Walker Evans, is really concentrating, if you think about what time of day he went to capture this photograph and where he's capturing that light, I think is also really important.
Where he's standing.
So
Yeah.
just, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, where are the people?
Right. So a few of you have commented on kind of industrial life and death and work and mechanized life and kind of what industry brings to us. It's interesting too to think about industry being at a standstill right now and kind of that juxtaposition between life and death.
What feels close and what feels distant? I like that Chelsea says the smokestack is a kind of barrier to the rest of the city, right? It's like a series of barriers, this photograph.
It's also very balanced. If we look at kind of the capture of and kind of how he frames the photograph with the number of windows right in front of us with the juxtaposition of the steel stacks behind it, these structural lines and balance.
I think there's also a lot of rhythm in this photograph. The rhythm of the repetition of the windows, of the architectural detail across the top of the row house, of the steel stacks, one to the next, to the next, to the next. The tombstones in their kind of scattered rhythm. Natasha observes that there's no clear path from the cemetery to the city, which raises the question of how would you feel if you were in this scene? Is there a place to stand? Is there a way to move? What would that feel like? Janice says, nothing is level, which is interesting to think about how you might stand there. What's it like to look at something in black and white? Does that make it seem more real or less real?
So I'm going to go ahead and advance. Is that okay? Okay.
Sure.
All right. So we have some writing prompts. So for the poem by Banu Kapil and this photograph, they're kind of both thinking about community as and geography as emblematic of love and loss and the passage of time, though they, grapple with that in different ways. So this prompt is about kind of describing community and how community might play a place and how we define home. And I really actually love that question. That was the title of the poem, Who Are You and Whom Do You Love? So who are the parts of your community that are most meaningful to you? And you can use sensory details to describe what those places are like. And also you might want to write about what is the distance between you and your loved ones. So we're going to take about 4 minutes and write about this. And if you feel comfortable sharing your work in the chat box, definitely feel free to do that. Gonna take another minute. Okay. I was reading your responses in the chat and they're all really beautiful. Thank you for sharing those. So we're gonna move on to the last set of poem and artwork. So this is a poem by Jennifer S. Chang from this book by her. And it's called What She Left Behind. Is there anybody who'd volunteer to read this? Linda, thank you.
What She Left Behind. A lampshade embroidered with blue string, a fan stretched like skin, gone brittle and slit, one jar with a light bulb taped to its lid, 3 twigs tied together and strapped to a box, a broken hem, a bag full of salt, mornings of fog and late hours amassing in a pile of stillness, their bed frame, their bed sheets, the shelf he hung for her, a cabinet crowded with bowls, cups, jars, vases, empty vessels, amputations.
Thank you, Linda. You're also an exceptional reader. Okay, so yeah, what stands out to you all about this poem? Any particular images or lines that resonate? So Natasha says deep, deep loss. Mark says amputations. Yeah. And Susan said that, they're not necessarily about the body or have anything to do with the body. Susan, do you want to elaborate on that? In the meantime, Judy has said it's a list poem, but still manages to be narrative. Absolutely. And yeah, very strange objects. The 3 twigs tied together and strapped to a box.
Wait, I hear somebody talking.
Did you hear me now?
I think so, yeah. Susan?
Yeah, I'm Susan, and I'm actually really far away from you guys because I know you're in Pennsylvania, or some of you may be really far away too. I'm in the Aleutian Islands of Alaska. But I think like when we amputate things from our lives, like I know so many people that have moved or they travel, whether they're in Europe or wherever they are, or they get divorced or something happens in their lives. My sister is a broker and she was laid off, and she said, I've been amputated from my life's passion, my work. So I think when we look at poetry, language, the way it's used, we need to sometimes step back from that immediate association. We hear amputation, we think, oh, the body, but it might be something very different. And I really like that word actually, so I'm glad I read it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Susan. Wow, thanks for tuning in from so far away. But yeah, something, amputation speaks of a loss. Though the word does like carry kind of a violence with it. But the violence doesn't have to be literal. Hmm.
Child, because I know people that have lost children, and that is like an amputation from not just themselves. They feel an amputation, they've lost a child, but they feel a violent severage between what they thought was going to happen with their life. They're going to have children, grandchildren, you know what I mean? And then this amputation of hope or expectation. So it's really, it can be seen really violent. You're right. Emotionally violent, maybe.
Yeah. So, what about this poem? Like, what does it make you think of or feel as relates to place or home? Like, how is that represented or described in the poem? A lot of household objects are mundane but have personal meaning to them. Yeah, absolutely. Susan, I'm interested in the cabinet. Yeah, we nest, we gather all our stuff around us. Yeah. I imagine some of us might be even more intensely nesting right now. I know I am. Yeah. Janice says she's cleaning out her closets and seeing all these strange juxtapositions of objects from my past. So it's interesting how things are representative of who we are at a moment in time, or who we loved or who we still love. A weird assemblage of objects meaningful to us, but only us. Yeah. Good question, Susan. So is the morning fog weather or fog of the mind and body? It's a really good question. I feel like there's a duality in how she uses that word. It could be both. Okay, so we're gonna go over time. And I'm gonna move on to the artwork. But thank you all again for your comments on the poem, making me look at it with different eyes. Okay.
This is our next work of art by Michael Smith, who was a photographer from Bucks County, not too far from here. And he received a commission from Broward County to document the community there. And given the poem that we just spent some time thinking about, what are some things that come to mind, or what do you notice when you look at this photograph? Natasha said it's black and white, yet she feels growth, which I think is a really beautiful observation. The door seems blacked. It does seem blacked. And is this the only entrance to the home? And, you know, what does that make us think of, that there's this chair in front of the door?
What's, the mystery of the inside versus the outside, what we can know from the evidence given, and then what we can imagine.
And as we think of the front porch of a home, what comes to mind with that?
How would figures occupy this space.
Mhm.
Who wrote that number? Looks like maybe it's written. Maybe it's just a little wiggly on the post.
Hmm. And looking at, again, the light that the photographer is capturing in this photograph, what time of day do we think this is? And what do we think about that time of day and where the shadows are?
And the temperature. How easy or difficult would it be to deliver the mail to the mailbox?
I love the juxtaposition of these kind of comfortable seats, or this welcoming kind of seat there with this like sharp kind of cactus that could possibly hurt you.
Right. Welcome or not welcome?
And what do we think about this as a photograph, as a medium versus possibly a painting? And I love that Susan said she's surprised there isn't, but she keeps looking for a wind chime. So what kinds of things would we hear if we were sitting on this front porch, and what kinds of things would we see as an sitting there and observing out from that chair?
How near or far away are other houses or other events happening in the neighborhood? I keep thinking about houses that I know where people don't use their front door as their front door.
I live in one of those houses. I love the linear effect of the house, the siding on the house, the windows, and kind of the horizontal lines juxtaposed with kind of the organic lines of the cactus.
Something about that empty hanging basket. Yeah.
Yeah, and almost how the rest of the cactuses, cacti are unkempt, like they've grown wild.
Right. And also, I guess maybe something about time in relation to like time and care in the amount of attention like that a cactus needs versus the time and attention of whatever is not in that hanging basket.
Hmm.
It's okay if I advance. Okay. So we're going to move on to some reflective prompts again. Okay. So both the photograph and the poem are kind of about artifacts and how artifacts can speak to a life, even though in both the photograph and the poem there's no person really mentioned, but we see those signs of life in the emptiness. So describe your home and its artifacts. Write a list of the things in or around your home that are most meaningful to you, and what do they look like? So what color are they? Well worn? Are they new? Kind of think like an archaeologist, very similar to what we did with the poem and with this photograph. And also you might want to consider how those things indicate presence and or absence. So we'll take 4 minutes and then we'll come back and wrap up. So another minute. Okay. We so we had initially for people to share, and so you have been doing that all along the way, and I'm still the latest batch of things you put in the chat box. But would anybody like to share out loud what they wrote about at any point during today's dialogue? You can write in the chat or just unmute yourself.
I'll read something.
Okay, thank you, Janice.
Okay, this was from the very first one, the moment of reflection, of deep reflection. I'm on a small dock on the shore of Lake Winnipesaukee in New Hampshire. I have some time before my next class at the music camp I'm attending. It's hot, but there's a cool breeze across the water, and the smell of the pine needles on the path beside the dock. Quiet other than the breeze ruffling the leaves. I think about the ephemeral nature of these moments of pure happiness. To try to name it is to lose it. I have my pen and notebook, but I put them down, breathe deeply, and just sit and gaze at the cloud shadows racing across the water. This is a time to just be, not to capture it, not to make it wait, not to make it count for something, not to assign it value.
Thank you. I definitely, hearing you read that helped instill a sense of like peacefulness just listening to you.
Yeah.
Would anybody else like to share out loud what they wrote or in the chat box? Susan? So however you want to do it, you can say out loud or...
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sometimes people don't even hear me, just a few other villages over in Alaska. So I wrote about this one is the second one. And, you know, this is kind of a hard time to be away from so many people, especially my father lives, you know, in Princeton, so far away from me. But I talk to him all the time, even though sometimes he's still grouchy. But anyways, last year it was so hot here in Dillingham and Bristol Bay. A lot of our salmon had heart attacks, really just hundreds of thousands of them had heart attacks. And my dad had a heart attack. So anyways, here it is, just not very long. Where Salmon Run is the home of all who live here in Dillingham. The sweet potato orange and reds of salmon by the hundreds of thousands rushing to spawn to the outer Bering Sea. How far the waters keep me from home. 3,500 miles I'd have to swim to find my father's doorstep.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you so much. That was really powerful. Would anybody else like to share? So Natasha put something in the chat, and her dog is being quite noisy. Would anybody, so Celia, it looks like you are willing to read what she wrote.
Yes, in fact, I just wanted to say something that I've started that I'm willing to like have go viral and be famous for is I am doing a pandemic poem project. And what I'm doing is, just as I talk to friends, is say, you know what, take a picture of a piece of art in your home and send it to me without any background info or prompts of any sort, and I will write you a poem. And it's really actually been a very nicely received idea. And it's very easy, you know, and it's sort of no pressure. I'm not looking to do poetic masterpieces, but it's been a great thing for me to do while I'm sort of holed up here under lockdown, to just look at something that's hanging in somebody's home, or, you know, standing as a little sculpture on their table, and just sort of be with it for a moment. And it's sort of reminded me how this kind of workshop where you just throw up a poem or a piece of art is something that can prompt us to do other writing about. So I really thank you for that.
Yeah, of course. I'm glad that you could be here with all of us. So I'm gonna read what Natasha had sent. So she wrote, for the last one, the last prompt, a folding camping chair with yesterday's pants and bra, foam mattress on the floor, desk filled with the usual office supplies, dog kennel, blankets strewn about, TV streaming a crime drama. Thank you, Natasha. So I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up, to be mindful and respectful of all of your times. So like Stacy had mentioned at the beginning, we want to do a digital chapbook for this event. So whatever you might like to share that you wrote, or maybe you might go take some of these prompts with you and work on more work, you can share it with us and we'll include it in the digital chapbook. And you can do that with your name, with a pseudonym, or anonymously, whatever you feel most comfortable with. And we'll be sending you a follow-up email with this information. So you'll have the works of art, the poems, and the prompts, and some kind of follow-up instructions if you're interested in doing this. And also follow us on social media at these two handles for the art galleries and the libraries to see more of what we're up to during this time. The art galleries in particular, they have a lot of really wonderful events happening all the time. Stacy and Mark, do you want to?
One more slide. The last slide, if you don't mind. So yeah, we're so grateful for all of you coming here today, sharing your wonderful writing and being open to, you know, be a part of this process. We have a lot of really great resources on both the Art Galleries website at luag.org as well as the Lehigh University Libraries website. I wanted to mention that we have two wonderful programs coming up. One this coming Tuesday, which is part of our Art and Dialogue series in conjunction with the Art, Architecture, and Design exhibition, which is on display in the galleries currently. It is our last of the series with architect Anthony Viscardi and Tim Higgins. And then we have a LUAG family workshop, which is coming up on May 16th. In between, which is not listed on here, we have a Cocktails with a Curator, which Mark will be featuring a creative recipe for a martini paired with a work of art, Ellsworth Kelly. So we hope that you will join us for that. I'll send information to all of you with the recording, with prompts, more information about how to share your writing with us. But we are so grateful for having all of you here today. Your comments and writing was really inspiring. And you are all excellent observers of works of art. So it was nice to see kind of what you noticed within the works that we chose. So,
thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you all so much.
Wow.
We will be in touch.
Bye. Good night.
Have a wonderful evening.